All right, let's just jump right in. Today, we're diving into this explainer to unpack Ayn Rand's massive 1957 dystopian thriller, Atlas Shrugged. Now, on the surface, this book plays out like a really gripping industrial sci-fi mystery, but underneath all of that, it's a giant and honestly highly polarizing philosophical argument. So today, we're going to break the whole thing down, the characters, the story, and the core ideas that drive this massive book and make it completely accessible.
Now, you might be wondering, where do we even begin? Well, we have to start with the ultimate question that literally echoes through the crumbling society in the book: who is John Galt? When the story opens, the economy is totally falling apart, and people are just throwing this mysterious phrase around as slang. It essentially means, who knows, or what's the point? But as you'll see, finding the actual answer to this question is the absolute key to understanding why their world is collapsing.
Okay, starting us off with Section 1, the ultimate strike. The world's smartest minds walk away. So imagine a world where the absolute smartest, most hardworking people, we're talking the inventors, the scientists, the engineers, the business leaders, they just suddenly decide to go on strike. But here's the catch. They aren't striking for better pay, they literally just vanish. They completely withdraw their minds from a society that is constantly trying to regulate and control them. And without them, well, trains stop running, power grids completely fail, and factories just shut down. This strike of the mind is the central engine that drives the entire plot.
Which brings us to Section 2, Producers versus Looters, the character map of Atlas Shrugged.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how Rand severely divides her characters into two entirely opposite camps. On one side, we have the producers, or the creators. These are your brilliant, practical heroes, people like Dagny Taggart, who's this amazing railroad executive, or Hank Rearden, a self-made steel tycoon who literally invents a revolutionary new metal. They use facts, science, and hard work to build the world. But then on the totally opposite side, you've got the looters, or moochers. These are the antagonists, like Dagny's incompetent brother James, or government scientists, like Dr. Floyd Ferris. They don't actually create anything. Instead, they seek power and use government regulations to basically leech off the success of the producers.
Moving right along to Section 3, the dystopian collapse, a speed run of society's downfall.
The way this conflict plays out is practically a speed run of a society falling apart. The book is actually split into 3 parts, and they're all named after rules of formal logic. In Phase 1, non-contradiction, Dagny successfully builds a train line using Rearden's new metal, but government overreach pushes a brilliant oilman named Ellis Wyatt to literally set his own oil wells on fire rather than surrender them. Then in Phase 2, either or. The government panics. Incompetent bureaucrats end up forcing a train into the Winston Tunnel, causing this massive deadly disaster. And finally, Phase 3, A is A. This is where the mysterious John Galt hijacks the national radio to explain exactly why the world is dying, which culminates in the absolute failure of the New York City power grid. The old world just collapses in total darkness.
And you know what the ultimate catalyst for this collapse is? It's this fictional set of totalitarian laws called Directive 10-289. Under these laws, workers are completely frozen in their current jobs. Businesses aren't allowed to open or close. All patents are just seized by the state, and nobody is allowed to earn more than they did the year before. The government actually thinks this is going to stabilize the economy, but instead it is literally the death of progress. It's so bad that it forces Dagny Taggart to resign in absolute horror, walking away from a society that has basically become a dictatorship.
All right, on to Section 4, Welcome to Atlantis, Inside Galt's Gulch.
So, while chasing down a fleeing scientist, Dagny's plane crashes in this hidden valley in Colorado, and boom, she finally discovers where all those missing geniuses went. It's a secret, totally self-sufficient community called Galt's Gulch, or Atlantis. And who's running the show? The man himself, John Galt. He's the mastermind who convinced the world's greatest thinkers to stop supporting a society that was exploiting them. And the absolute foundational rule of Atlantis is this one oath: I swear by my life and my love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine.
Next up, Section 5, the Objectivist Philosophy, decoding Ayn Rand's core argument.
Okay, so underneath this whole sci-fi thriller plot is a massive philosophical framework that Rand called Objectivism. She didn't just write this to tell an exciting story, she wrote it to teach this exact philosophy. Think of it like 4 massive structural pillars. First is reality. Facts are facts, regardless of your feelings. A is A. Second is reason. Human logic and observation are our absolute only tools for acquiring knowledge. You can't build bridges on gut instinct, right? Third is self-interest, or rational egoism. Rand argues that your own life and happiness are your highest moral goals, and you should never sacrifice yourself for others.
And fourth is capitalism. She argues that unregulated, laissez-faire free markets are the only moral political system, and the government should have absolutely zero involvement in the economy.
And that leads us right into one of the most fascinating concepts in the entire book, the sanction of the victim. Basically, Rand argues that evil can only succeed if good people actually cooperate and allow themselves to be victimized. We see this play out perfectly when Hank Rearden is put on trial for violating economic regulations. Instead of apologizing or trying to defend himself, he flat out refuses to cooperate. He essentially tells the judges, "I don't recognize your right to put me on trial for the crime of being successful." By doing that, he removes his sanction and leaves the unjust system completely powerless against his logic.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, the Great Debate. Why Atlas Shrugged is so polarizing.
Now, because these ideas are so uncompromising, we really need to look at why this book causes such an intense debate in the real world. I mean, people are super split on this. For those who love it, Atlas Shrugged is this incredibly empowering anthem for individualism. It tells you your life belongs to you, and it uniquely makes heroes out of engineers and business builders. Plus, it serves as a stark warning against bureaucracy stifling creativity. However, critics validly argue that Rand's philosophy is pretty cold and heartless. They point out that in the real world, people are born with systemic disadvantages or disabilities, and having a society with absolutely zero safety nets or charity is just cruel. Critics also note that the characters are super simplistic, like perfectly beautiful heroes versus whining villains, and that a lot of that 1,000-plus page length is just overly repetitive philosophical speeches.
But to bring these massive, towering concepts down to eye level, it's actually pretty wild how well they map onto everyday situations. Like, if you strip away the 1950s train industry setting, the whole strike of the mind thing, it's exactly like doing all the heavy lifting in a school group project and eventually deciding you're just gonna stop helping the slackers. The villains using guilt is basically identical to peer pressure, like when friends make you feel bad for studying or call you a tryhard. And the underlying philosophy really just champions using rationality over what's trending on social media and taking total, unapologetic responsibility for your own actions.
So at the end of the day, whether you find immense inspiration in Rand's celebration of achievement or you completely reject her worldview as lacking compassion, this explainer leaves us with one absolutely massive, provocative question. What do you owe to yourself, and what do you owe to the world?
Please like and subscribe.